And now the United Nations top court is convening today, opening a week of hearings on Israel and the Palestinians. And so joining us now to elaborate is journalist and JNS Jerusalem Bureau Chief Alex Traiman. Alex, so much to cover today. Let's start with the International Court of Justice. What is this about?
Thanks so much, Amit. Following the case brought by South Africa to try Israel on the bogus charges of genocide, the General Assembly of the United Nations has now asked the International Court of Justice to provide an advisory opinion, which is actually completely non-binding, but they are now starting to ask questions not only about genocide, but whether they consider Israel to be an apartheid, an occupation, an ethnic cleansing. If you name it, you can just put any accusation against Israel you want, and the International Court of Justice is going to rule whether or not Israel's done it.
And what's your opinion on that?
Well, the United Nations is a body that sanctions Israel, or more not than any country in the United Nations, but more than all countries in the United Nations combined. So it has clearly demonstrated itself to be a completely anti-Israel and biased body. And just the fact that the International Court of Justice would even consider hearing a trial on the case of whether or not Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip, I think really demonstrates how biased this body is. And it's unfortunate that Israel is even being forced to participate. They're not participating in the current hearings, but they did participate in the genocide trial.
Alex, more than 50 states, no less, are set to address the judges on this issue. I mean, what do all these countries have to do with this? I mean, everyone wants their say when it comes to Israel this time.
Well, the United Nations has become the main punching bag, the place where Israel can be hit. And unfortunately, the United Nations for years has been riling up its member nations, many of whom are members of the Arab League. And so this isn't uncommon, unfortunately, for the United Nations. And they all are just going to try to put as much diplomatic pressure on Israel as possible. And the fear here is that if the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, come down with rulings against Israel, that those rulings could then be used as the basis for financial sanctions against the Jewish state in the future.
Okay, now back to the issue of Palestinian statehood. The cabinet has passed a strong statement against a reported U.S. plan for a post-Gaza war in the Middle East. The plan has yet to be presented publicly and would reportedly be released only after a ceasefire agreement or a pause in fighting is reached in Gaza. What details do we have about the plan?
Well, the big fear is that the Biden administration is considering ways to recognize a Palestinian state unilaterally, meaning even if Israelis and Palestinians don't agree to go into negotiations toward the creation of a Palestinian state, that the United States and others, including the UK, and David Cameron said as much a few weeks ago, that they would all consider unilaterally recognizing Palestinian statehood. Last night, United States Ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, said that the United States has not said that as of yet, and are looking at rather a path toward a Palestinian state on the horizon. They wouldn't necessarily unilaterally approve Palestinian statehood, but if they did, this would essentially be the end of the Oslo process, the end of the Land for Peace process, where the United States and others would say, we don't care if the Palestinians can deliver peace. We still want Israel to divide its land.
Alex, you know, the U.S. plan also reportedly includes normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which Prime Minister Netanyahu has long touted, even much before the war, as the big prize towards complete Israeli acceptance in this region. Is that not worth the price?
Well, the Abraham Accords, Israel's normalization with the Emirates and with Bahrain, demonstrated that the Palestinian issue is not part of the normalization process with other states in the Middle East. Israel was on the path toward normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia before this war, and Palestinian statehood had nothing to do with it. The United States is now trying to essentially bribe Israel into Palestinian statehood by linking it up to Saudi normalization. But I don't think that Israel would be prepared to go into a normalization agreement if that meant that it would have to tear its country in half and gift a state to the Palestinians after they committed the worst massacre in Israel's history on October 7th.
Yes, indeed, that's on point. Alex Traiman, we missed you a lot here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.